Let's turn the time over to Fauzi. He'll be introducing Matthew, our speaker for this evening. Once Matthew is finished with his presentation and the Q&A, I have an update on the Coaches for Good and NAC and UAE government project that we're working on. So if you're interested in participating in that project, please stay on and I'll give you an update there. Thanks. Fauzi.
Thank you, Dennis. أهلا وسهلا فيكم. مساء الخير. Good evening. Thank you all for participating this evening with us, with Coaches for Good. We are all honored, excited to have Matthew with us this evening. I've known Matthew since 2013, since I have joined the Hoffman process. A turning point in my life, but this will be a different subject for a different session. Matthew is an expert and a coach in relationship, a very important subject that we face challenges with because of its complexity. Today he is going to have a presentation on this subject, and would like to encourage you to interact and to have any questions that you would like to have in the chat box. Matthew, welcome. Thank you very much. Looking forward for an exciting time. Thank you very much, Matthew. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Fauzi. Thank you very much. And thank you everybody for joining in. It's really nice to have a good size of group. I really appreciate it. Yes, I am a relationship coach. And as Fauzi said, I'm also a facilitator of something called the Hoffman process. So in either sphere of my life, I'm working with people. I do also do one-to-one coaching. I have been, I guess, for about 15 years or so. My focus is with intimate life, and my focus is working with couples. And I've devised a course, a 3-day course for couples, which is probably the thing that keeps me busiest. So that's kind of, if you like, my CV. None of that is at all important in terms of my motivation compared to the more personal fact of my background, which is that I've had 2 long marriages, or I should put it slightly differently. I'm in my 2nd long marriage. I have no plans to move on from that one. So I was married for about 20 years, and then that marriage came to an end, and I've been married again for about 20 years, or at least we've been together about 20 years, been married about 16 or 17. So I have 2 children from my first marriage. I have a stepchild from my 2nd, and I have a child of my own from my 2nd as well. So yes, 20-year itch, you could say, Sonia, thank you. So what that means is it's the whole glorious, messy mess of merged families, of long lives and interactions and intimacies, and meeting people at different stages of my life and with different levels of need. So it's really those credentials that I think are more useful than any qualifications I have. Of course, I do work a lot with couples, and I see some very familiar things happening again and again. And I suppose it's from that world that I want to share with you, because what I'm going to be doing with you this evening is looking at a cycle of 6 stages. It's not the truth, you know, I don't want us to fall into that trap. It's not like it's the ultimate truth. I haven't been up to the top of the mountain and spoken to God about this and come down with tablets of stone or anything. I just observe this model unfolding again and again in my own life, in my own intimate relationships. I see it also to a less obvious degree in my other relationships. So I will be focusing on intimate life today, but you may recognize some of this stuff in other settings. And I see it over and over again in the couples that come and work with me. So it's a cycle. It's a cycle of 6 stages. It's not my own wisdom. I've drawn from other wisdom traditions, mostly from an author who's now something a little bit from the past, actually. You may well have read his work. He's called Harville Hendricks. You can give me a wave or a thumbs up or something if you recognize that name. He wrote a very famous and justifiably well-known book in the 80s, I think, called Getting the Love You Want. And it's a treasure trove of very useful things. It's a bit of an old classic in a way, but even if it is old, it's still full of profoundly useful things. And I've been dipping in and out of it all these years. The cycle he's referring to, you can think of in a way as the story of relationship. And at this point, I'd just like to share a screen with you, which I will be coming in and out of. And as you will see, it's a sequence of 6 slices of the pizza, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And perhaps most peculiar about it is that romantic love, here, this bit here, is not number 1. He's saying that the relationship, as strange as it may sound, does not begin with person meets person and falls in love. And that seems a peculiar observation. And yet, when we look at what does begin the cycle, it starts to make sense, because what we're looking at is the enormous influence of childhood experiences on who we find attractive, and more subtly, who we attract, so who we are attractive to. And I'll come back out of the sharing. You can screenshot that later if you like. What we see is that, of course, there is a certain degree of conscious intention in who we find attractive. It's not like we're completely trapped in our childhoods and hypnotized by our childhoods and sleepwalking into relationship. But what Harville Hendricks refers to is a principle that's a bit like an iceberg. And what he's really saying is that about 20% of our experience is the bit of the iceberg that's above the water. And as much as 80% of it is unconscious. The 20% is the stuff we know. You know, if I were to, God forbid, if I were to be beginning a new relationship with someone who wasn't my partner, I know, particularly at my age, I know there's certain characteristics that I'm looking for. You know, their personality characteristics, their characteristics based on appearance. And probably if I was chatting to a friend in the cafe, I would be saying, this is my type, you know, this is the kind of person I go for. Great, that won't change, or if it does change, it'll be conscious. But what this guy Hendricks is really drawing our attention to is that as much as 80% of the decision making that we think is free will and conscious is driven by the influence of our childhood. What he's talking about is the blessings of our childhood. So you can think about this for yourselves. What ways did you benefit? Did you experience love in childhood? What were the characteristics of your mum and dad that you loved when you were little? We'll come to the bit that you didn't love in a minute, of course, but just to start with, what ways were your parents able to meet your needs? So when I reflect on my experience, my mother, I have a Lebanese Palestinian mother and an English father. And so it doesn't follow automatically, but it's pretty reliable that a Middle Eastern mother will be very, very cuddly. So I got what a lot of people, particularly those people who were slightly overlooked or neglected in childhood, would regard as a lottery winning level of very physical cuddles and love. And if you speak Arabic, I got a lot of ya ruhi, albi, ayuni, habibi, and all that stuff, you know. So physically and vocally, I wasn't in any doubt about how loved I was. So that was great. I am therefore attracted to people who will give me a lot of, you know, I left in no doubt. My wife is quite happily, I love you, darling, have a great day. You know, it's good for me. It hits the spot. Mum did it. I loved it. My wife does it. I love it. I'm attracted to it. It's good. My dad, on a good day, and I have to say, there weren't so many of them, but and a martini helped a little bit when he had one. But on a good day, he could be very playful, and he could also be quite funny and artistic and musical and stuff when he was relaxed. So there's no doubt I really like a good sense of humor, and I like a bit of mischief in my companionship, not just in my partner, but in my friends and so on. A little bit of naughtiness really hits the spot. This is on the surface in a way. This is the stuff I loved as a child. Of course, I'm going to be attracted to it in other adults. Now, there's a flip side. It wasn't just roses and sunshine, of course. So although I'm happy to say I came from a non-abusive childhood, of course, abuse will do the trick very readily, but even though there wasn't abuse exactly, there were, ups and downs. These were human beings. My dad had affairs. My mum looked to me as the youngest, took me as her little teddy bear in a way. Part of my job in her life was a lot of that cuddle really was about comforting her. Looking back, I can see that I was in service to her in a way. Also, I couldn't breathe sometimes. There was a little too much of it. So it was a bit smothering. My father also could be very critical. He had worked incredibly hard to give me what he didn't have himself as a child, which was a British public school education. And he was incredibly proud of being able to send his sons to a British public school. And he was completely oblivious to the fact that I was tormented with homesickness aged 8, being sent from Beirut to school in England. So I experienced him as abandoning and rejecting, not only, but I did. So fast forward to my adult life, and I'm looking for a partner, or I'm finding people attractive. So not only am I attracted, and not only are we all attracted to people who have the characteristics that we loved about our family and friends when we were little, our surrogate parents as well as our parents, perhaps our grandparents or nannies if we were looked after by nannies. But I'm also, bizarrely, and this seems like a big design fault, I'm attracted to people who also have the negative characteristics of my parents. And this is part of the bit that's under the waterline. We don't know this. We're not aware of it. It's unconscious. Why? Why on earth would we be attracted to people for the characteristics that hurt us when we were little? I mean, it seems completely bonkers, doesn't it? Why? Well, it's not because it's nice that we are. That's for sure. It's because, of course, you probably anticipate this. It's because we subconsciously recreate the environment we grew up in. Thank you, Dennis, exactly. Yes, we are attracted to it, not because it's nice, because it's familiar. It's known. Now, it's a great English expression, the devil you know. I'd rather have the devil I know than the devil I don't know, or maybe the angel I don't know. I don't know. And I don't know is really scary. And I know this. I know what it's like to be around someone who doesn't really notice me. I know that really well. I grew up my whole childhood with that. And of course, I created my personality in reaction to that. Often, we have a personality, don't we? We want people to know I'm fiercely independent. Very often what that means is I was neglected when I was little and I had to be independent. So in a way, I feel relaxed and in my comfort zone, not happy exactly, but in my comfort zone when I'm with people who are pressing my buttons from childhood. So coming back to our little model here, what we have is this bridge that takes us from all the family roles that we took on, the met and the unmet needs of childhood and the influences of our parents, into finding someone attractive and them finding us attractive too. Now that's the magic sweet spot that we could call romantic love. Would be nice to have a little interaction. Just press a little thumbs up button or something, or a wave. If any of you read what was in social media and in the press probably about 6 or 7 years ago, and it was called Falling in Love Under Laboratory Conditions, or sometimes it's referred to as the 32 questions. Anyone? Yeah, so Saliba, you've seen that. Anyone else? Dave? Yeah, okay, Nadine, a few of you. Okay, well, then you'll probably know what I'm about to say. But for those of you who don't, what people have done, this is behavioral psychologists have gathered people together, not just anyone randomly, but people who are curious and willing to see if they might fall in love. They're open to the possibility, so they're not resistant, they're curious and open. And roughly speaking, they give each other the nod of approval. So they look at each other. They've never met before. They look at each other and go, okay, let's see if we could fall in love. They're not appalled by the idea. Then they sit them down and they have them very close to each other, eye contact. And I believe they hold hands. And they're both on a headset, like me. They've both got a headset on. And they're being fed these questions. I think there's 32 of them altogether. And the questions they have to answer, they speak out to the other person. So effectively, they're telling the other person about their lives. They're telling about the other person, about their childhoods, about their hopes, about their dreams, about what they long for, what they yearn for, what they're frightened that they might not ever get. Very vulnerable information, what they're most proud of about themselves, what they're most ashamed of about themselves. And they have to be generous with this information. It takes a certain courage. And the other person does absolutely nothing other than stay in eye contact and listen. So there's no question of pity or praise or advice, certainly no criticism or blame or judgment. There's no interaction at all other than silent witnessing. They're just with you. It takes about an hour and a half for the first person to do that. Then, of course, the roles are reversed, and the second person who was listening speaks their experience of their life. And the first witnesses them, just is present to them. Now, what they do then is very interesting, is they take saliva samples and blood tests, and they monitor the body chemistry changes in these people, and they also observe the psychological changes. And all the things that we associate with falling in love happen very suddenly, and much to the shock of the participants concerned. They're very surprised. They notice that they've become infantilized. That is to say, they feel very young, and even if they're, my age or older, they feel 16, as we say, and they become fascinated, super fascinated, and they want to really obsessively spend time with this person. And they say all those gooey things like, I feel completed by you, or even more childishly in a way, they say things like, blue, you like blue? I love blue. That's amazing. They make meaning of things that are very, very innocent and very young. And the body chemistry testing that they do shows that there is a culprit. There is a hormonal culprit that you can associate. It floods the body in under a second, around about the time when two people feel both acceptable to the other, not just acceptable, but wanted, and wanting. So when I experience you as wanting me and I want you too, boom. And the hormone you may well have read about, I'm not an endocrinologist and I don't pretend to be, but the hormone you may well have read about is phenylethylamine, or PEA. And basically, we're kind of stoned. We go into a stoned state, a drugged state, which is characterized by the belief that you are the one who will heal my wounds. In a way, we may not have that thought consciously, but the child in us, the residue from this part of our lives, is looking for that healing. It's looking for that that reassurance. And I found in you, dear partner, the particular quality of love that I've been yearning for all my life and all through my childhood. And there's this sort of merging. We sort of become one. Now, that's a delicious state, and I recommend whoever gets into it thoroughly enjoys it and drinks up every last drop. However, it will and absolutely has to come to an end. So there is a bridge that takes us from this delicious romantic love phase into this next rather depressingly titled power struggle. So let's examine what that could be. What could it possibly be? Anyone willing to make a suggestion? If so, just it comes from, if you're asking Jessica about the title of the study, excuse me, I don't know about the title, but it comes from the work of Harville Hendricks. It's written at the bottom of the screen, which I'll share with you again.
Thanks.
So, you're welcome. Anyone willing to share what was your experience of transitioning out of romantic love, that initial honeymoon phase? What do you think takes us from this delicious romantic love phase into the more real and more complex and difficult part of the relationship? Anyone want to just unmute and share? Feel free. The fall of responsibilities, that's Balsam, that's fantastic. Yes, but there's a word I sometimes refer to as the C word, not that C word. I wouldn't dream of using that one. It's a different C word, and it means daily struggles. Yes, what was a C word that means responsibilities? Anyone? Consensus reality. Very good. I like it. That's a good C word. No, commitment is the word I'm looking for. We make a commitment, and invariably, this isn't in every case, but invariably we've made that commitment in this rather stoned state. Now, I go on a principle, and I try and get this across with compassion to all the couples I work with, but the principle is this, is that human beings, when they're relaxed and they feel safe, they feel that they belong, are adorable. All of us, you, me, all of us, when we're relaxed, all our finest qualities are evident, and we're lovely, we're adorable, gorgeous people. Human beings, however, when they're under stress, go into their coping mechanisms and their strategies, their what's the word? Their coping strategies, their survival strategies. And that's always really hard to be around. Some people might get aggressive and controlling, so others might get blaming and judgmental. Others might get abandoning and rejecting or hiding, or they lack transparency, or they become secretive, or they act out addictively. So all of us have a coping strategy, and it's not going to be pleasant for our partner or anyone else. So relaxed people are super lovely. Stressed people are very hard to be around. When we're in love and we're in that romantic love state, we are beyond relaxed. So we are at our most gorgeous in that state. We are at our most adorable. When we make a commitment, and that could be different in different cultures, but typically it involves gathering all the important living people in your family and their family and friends into typically a building of civic or religious importance, and make vows to each other about living graciously and well with each other until we die. So it's quite a big number. That's commitment. If you then throw in something like a mortgage and 2 or 3 children, then the commitment levels are through the roof. Now, what happens then is that we live a much more fully rounded life. It's not just the dream world of romantic love. We enter into the world of stress, and no matter how lucky or happy or successful we may be, we will experience stress, we will experience threat, we will experience loss, and we will experience injustice in our lives. No matter who we are, even the wealthiest, even the most successful, even the wisest of us will have these ups and downs. Of course we will, in the rhythms of our life. So when we are under stress, we will go into our coping strategies. And when we are not, when we're relaxed, we will be our adorable selves. So we start to experience our partners not just relaxed, but also under stress. Now, the romantic mythology will tell us immediately that this is because we are with the wrong person. Or it'll tell us there's something wrong with us. Why isn't this going according to the Disney production? Why isn't this going according to the romantic model that I have listened to in every song, every movie, every book, every TV show, and what people say? Oh, you'll know when you know, when you're the right person. The right person is singular. There is only one, right? We hear all that stuff in a very young state, and we swallow more of it than we knew. So we hit hard this brick wall. Suddenly this person isn't as angelic as I'd imagined them to be. And worse than that is, nor am I. Because not only do we see them under stress, but they see us under stress too. When we see them under stress, we experience betrayal, little and big levels of betrayal. When they see us under stress, we experience shame. So when we look back at that picture, where is it? Here it is. We can see power struggle is very typically really just a ding-dong of betrayal and shame. And we contract. He uses the word contraction, which I think is a very good one. We tighten up. We become, in our coping strategies, we're in reaction to perceived threat. And we will then go into our own coping strategies, and we will not be open. It is the temporarily the death of intimacy. It's not possible to be open and intimate. I don't mean sexual, I mean close, I mean honest, I mean revealing of ourselves in this state. And so power struggle, why power struggle? Well, because we try and bend our partner back into the shape that we like them. Just a minute ago, you were my heaven, now you're my hell. I know, we say to ourselves, well, I'm going to win you back. First of all, I'm going to use the carrot. So I'm going to do all the lovely things that you liked before. I'm going to do even more of them to win you back and to turn you back, to transform you back. I hate to use this word, but to manipulate you back into being the shape I liked you in. And nobody responds well to that. In romantic love, we give that stuff naturally. It's its own reward to give, but in power struggle, we give it because we're on an angle. We're trying to manipulate. So no one appreciates it. Everyone feels manipulated. You know very well when someone's giving you something in order to get something from you, it's not very nourishing. So it's not received well. So then we feel hurt. Look, we say to ourselves in that victim-y way, look, I've been even more loving, and the awful person won't accept it, won't recognize it. So now I'm going to be punishing. Now remember, not only are we doing that, but our partners are doing that. So we are a mixture of trying to manipulate through sweetness and also to control through punishment. Now, what's punishment? It's not necessarily beating someone up. It could be criticism. I'm just going to nitpick. That's not okay. You did that wrong. What's the matter with you? Why, I told you about this. Why didn't you remember that? We can be relentlessly critical, or we can be withholding. We can withhold our affection. We can withhold our sense of humor. We can withhold our sexual availability. We can hold our support, our kindness. So we start to contract, and the relationship is more and more limited. Yes, withdrawal and silent treatment, exactly. So many different kinds of different punishments that we can do, subtle and not so subtle. And this is, of course, is unbearable. You know, we have fallen from a great height because only recently we were in this state. And then now we're in this state, and it's really heartbreaking. This is lonely, basically. This is a lonely state. And there is a certain acute, painful quality of loneliness in this state that's even worse than being alone. Being lonely and in relationship is echoes all the suffering of our childhood experience. So it re-traumatizes. I don't think that's over-exaggerating. We are re-traumatized. So therefore we dig our heels even deeper. And ultimately, it's the root cause of a lot of addiction. We will escape. How do we escape the power struggle? Well, in a million different ways. If you're me, you will go to work a little bit earlier every morning and come back a little bit later every evening until you're, without noticing, and you've become a workaholic. If you're me, you'll overeat, you know. If you're me in the past, you'll have too many glasses of wine with your supper. If you're me in the past, you'll chain smoke. You know, I've moved on a little bit. Luckily, I'd be dead if I carried on with those strategies. But if you're you, you'll know better what you do. What do you do to soothe your suffering? On the one hand, we're punishing our partner. On the other hand, we're escaping. The two classical ways, and forgive me if I'm being a little bit gender reductive here. I don't mean to be, but one of the ways certainly my parents' generation fell into, and I see it in the contemporary setting too, that men escape the suffering of relationship is they use the get out of jail card of work. They say, look, like I do, look at what a good husband and father I am. Look how hard I'm working. And yes, it is good to be a provider, but the secret agenda is I'm getting away from the loneliness and pain I feel in the relationship by overworking. Women can quite often immerse themselves into the children and they'll say, look, what a good mother I am. And it's true, they are a devoted mother, but there's a certain escapism. I'm not just a good mother. I've left the relationship. Our belonging is no longer to do with being lovers and friends. It's to do with me being in role as a mother or me being in role as a father. So hands up if you're depressed yet, because if you are, don't worry, the good news is coming right now. Actually, one more bit of bad news, sorry. How to get out of power struggle, because, well, to be honest, we all know, don't we? Don't we know couples who've got there and stayed there all their lives or ended up divorcing and stuff? Divorce doesn't necessarily end power struggle. We can still be in a reactive power struggle relationship with our partners. You see it, don't you, when the husband is dropping the kids off at the wife's house and they say to the child, tell your mother I'll be back at 5:30 or something. You know, it goes on after divorce. And if you're my grandmother, then it goes on, well, 50 years after her first husband died, she was still telling anyone who would listen what an old git he was for having had an affair. And they divorced all that time ago. So how to get out? Because we can get stuck there. We can get stuck there in our victim. We can get stuck there in our self-righteousness. How to get out? Well, humility. Humility is the key exit. And what I'm going to do is just run you through that. If you try and be humble or you try and forgive, it's going to be catastrophic. I know that if anyone comes to me and says, Matthew, no matter what you did to me, I forgive you, I don't feel good. I don't feel good. I feel patronized. I feel that they're making themselves big. Look how virtuous I am, and you're sinful, but I'm letting you. No, that's not what we're looking for here. That's cheap. It's not going to help. So how to make it authentic? How to make it real? Well, if you're interested, write this one down. There's two real steps. The first is we have to recognize that we know we're in power struggle with our partner. Now, if you ask me on a day-to-day basis, Matthew, how do you know you're in power struggle with your partner? I'd say it's because she's being a nightmare. That won't help. She might be, and if she were here, bless her, she'd probably admit she can be. But that still won't help because I have no control at all over how she is. I only have influence over my own thoughts and feelings and behaviors. So how else, other than she's being a nightmare, do I know I'm being a nightmare? What does that mean? It means I'm in my coping strategy patterns. Again, I can share from my own experience, when I am bottling up my feelings and then getting in the car and fantasizing about getting it all in the car, or when I'm overeating, if I put on weight, I know I've been in power struggle. Or when I'm getting into a bit of exhaustion because of how much I'm working, it's a clue that I've been in power struggle. Or if I'm being a martyr around the house, like doing the washing up, and say, don't worry, darling, I'll do the washing up again in that passive aggressive way, then I know I'm in power struggle. And I know that is difficult for my wife. So the first step of humility is to say to my wife, I know I'm in power struggle with you because I'm in my patterns. I have been bottling up my feelings. I have been expressing myself, and I've been a bit of a martyr. So yes, Sonia, communicate, exactly, but not communicate anything. Communicate my part in the issue. This is my role in us getting in power struggle. Exactly, thank you. So when I can do that, I recognize that it's distressing for my partner when I'm in my coping strategy. So the first step of this two-step thing is sorry. I know I've been in power struggle with you because I've been da-da-da-da-da. I'm sorry about that. Second step is we have to recognize that when we're in power struggle with people, we lose sight of the things that we love about them, and we focus on the things that we don't. So we have to sort of force ourselves. We go, what is it that you've been doing that I really appreciate that I haven't acknowledged for too long? Step one, I know I'm in power struggle with you because I'm in my patterns. I'm sorry. Step two, you've been doing the school run every day this week. You've been holding our child who's having a really big wobble at the moment. And I really appreciate that. I haven't thanked you for it. Thank you. So I'm sorry and thank you. This takes us into a whole new realm of possibility. It has to be authentic. We cannot do this in a sort of a cheap way. Oh, sorry, thanks, sorry. You know, that will not work. But it has to be authentic. When we do the thank you and the sorry authentically, it takes us into this, it takes us into this, all right, there we go. It takes us into this space that he calls expansion. Now, what happens in expansion is it becomes possible to have an empathic conversation. If you try and have an empathic conversation here in power struggle, it's going to go nowhere. Both parties are defensive. This drops the guard, this humility piece, and then it's possible to have a courageous and empathic conversation. What's an empathic conversation? Well, I really like this opener, and this is one of the ways I get my couples to communicate to each other. I get them to use sentence starters. And the sentence starter I like most is, it makes sense to me. So I have experienced my wife as blaming and critical. It makes sense to me why you might have been blaming and critical, given my pattern of, yes, so what do? My pattern is to withhold, to shut down, to disconnect. So it makes sense to me why you might have been judgmental or critical with me, given my pattern of. And then you open up the question, have I understood you well? So when couples can do that for each other, it creates safety and we become more and more trustworthy to each other. You see, particularly when we've acknowledged our patterns with an apology, when we've remembered that we don't just get into reaction with people, we also love them. And then we attempt to cross the bridge between our island and theirs. And in a way, instead of becoming an advocate for ourselves, when we're in power struggle, we advocate for ourselves. We defend our position. We're like the lawyer that we took on to defend us. But suddenly we can move into being like the other person's lawyer. We're their advocate. I'm wondering, I'm assuming this was hard for you if when it makes sense to me. And we do a bit of that toing and froing, and then what is created is intimacy. So intimacy is the honest sharing of our thoughts, feelings, and life experiences with our partners, and the honest witnessing of thoughts, feelings, and life experiences without agenda. So I'm sharing with you simply because I love you and I want to update you on who I am right now. And when we can share with no other agenda, you don't need to now do that. I'm not telling you what's sharing with agenda. It's like, I'm showing you how angry I am so that you can feel guilty, so that you can then react in the way I want you to react. Or it's I'm showing you how wounded I am so that you can feel anxious and uncomfortable and then adapt your behavior in the way that I'd like. That's not love, that's manipulation. Sharing, just to let you know who I am, is intimacy. And when people are able to do that, the famous hormone oxytocin is what we experience. And we experience each other as trustworthy. So the trust that will have broken down in power struggle gets rebuilt in this phase. Now, if anyone's thinking in that rather simplistic way, intimacy good, power struggle bad, get here and stay here, and never go there, and then I'll have a good relationship, then absolutely not. No, that's not what we're saying. I'll end with this point just to create space for questions. My belief is that relationships grow deeper and intimacy becomes deeper and deeper and warmer and stronger, not on how little we offend each other and how well we love each other. That helps. But the key thing that really develops that intimacy and deepens the love is on how well we manage power struggle. So a good relationship is not one with no power struggle. That, my friends, is a fantasy. You need to find yourself a saint to be married to. And frankly, I think that would be a little boring. I don't know. I've never met one. So, I think it would be a little bit boring being married to a saint. But if you accept that you, when you are relaxed, are adorable, and so is your partner when they're relaxed, and you can accept also that you and your partner are a lot less than adorable when you're stressed, then the thing is about power struggle is to get into it, but get out of it quickly. The pain of a power struggle is how long it can last. If we get out of it quickly, we become deeper and closer. We trust people who offend against us and put it right with humility, far more than we trust people who never offend against us. In fact, when people never offend against us, they're so distant. They've never let us get close enough. So that's my piece today about how to get in and out of power struggle. And I'm all yours to any questions. So thank you for that. Any questions?
Thank you, Matthew, so much for an interesting presentation. And please, the floor is open for any questions. I know I have a couple, but I'm going to wait.
So in your questions, you could either ask them just by coming off of mute, or if you prefer to write them into.
I think that's the better way, quite honestly. It may involve someone speaking at the same time as someone else, but we'll work that one out. I can't see everyone, so it'd be great if just come off mute. Is that you, Caroline?
Yes. Hi, Matthew.
Go for it. Hi, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you again. Matthew, I do have a question. Is every argument automatically a power struggle?
No, I don't think so. No. If you tread on a dog's tail, it goes and it's over with. And really what means is get off my tail now. And if you get off the tail now, it's done.
Then it's fine, sorted.
It's done. Power struggle comes from unexpressed stuff.
Yeah.
And, you know, some personality types really do express a lot. I'm quite happy to tell you how angry I am. I'm angry. I'm still angry. And I'm still angry even the next day. And I'm angry again. But that's not expressing the authentic feeling. That's using anger as a mechanism for hiding the truer feeling, which is the vulnerability underneath it. I'm frightened, I'm anxious, I'm lonely, I'm guilty, I'm jealous, you know, all that stuff that's hard to admit. So, I mean, there's two characters out there in every marriage. There's the one who's noisier and more dominant, and then the one who's more passive. And both have really beautiful qualities. One's typically very honest and dynamic, and the other's calm and gentle and relaxing and creative and stuff. But both have this flip side. One will hide when they're under stress, and the other one will go off like a bomb when they're under stress. One will be complaining, I say this over and over again and you never listen. And the other one will be complaining, every time I speak, you bite my head off. You know, so we know those characters. We know them really well. And it may not be quite as simple as that, but it's very possible. When the one who doesn't normally speak up speaks up and says, no, I want to talk about this and deal with it, then that's an interesting creative possibility. It doesn't have to be power struggle.
Okay. Thank you.
Matthew, my question for you is, you have explained how to reach into intimacy, but then the first start of the cycle is the childhood. And my question is, reaching intimacy does not mean that the childhood roots or the patterns will disappear. I'm assuming.
That's a safe assumption, yeah. What's the question?
The question is, how would I be more with my partner in trying to solve the power struggle by opening up, by having this conversation? Where does the childhood come in order to reach the full cycle?
In a way, romantic love prepares us very badly for this. We have to unlearn what we learned during the romantic love phase, because in the romantic love phase, in a way, the partner becomes the parent that we didn't have, parent that we longed to have. So we have to unlearn that. And one of the things that we need to do is we need to take responsibility for our own childhoods. Now, in power struggle, I'm making my childhood suffering my wife's responsibility. I'm saying, if you behave in this way, you will make me happy. If you behave in this way, you will make me angry or sad or frightened or lonely. I'm holding her responsible for my feelings. Disaster, absolute disaster. So I think that any growthful relationship, long-term committed relationship, I'm not talking about, you know, a fling, which would be fine and fun, but I'm talking about if we're going to have a long-term committed, maybe even lifelong relationship with someone, we must make time for our own personal development. We must do a bit of, you know, like Hoffman work, you know, it doesn't have to be Hoffman, but we must take responsibility for making peace with our own history. And the more we can do that, the greater blessing it is to our partner.
Matthew, we've got a couple of questions from the audience. First, Jennifer, you want to come off of mute and ask your question?
Yes, thank you. Excellent webinar, Matthew. Very interesting. Thank you first. I have two questions and one request. The first question, you said in the beginning that we tend to get attracted to people that simulate our parents' attribute. And sometimes I find that we get attracted to things that we missed as children, like we want present man because our dad was away, or we want a loving mom because our mom was tough. Do you agree? And why is it that some people are attracted to the opposite of what they had, and some people were attracted to the things that they had already? And shall I ask my second, or do you want to?
I'll come back in a second. Let me deal with that one first. Yeah, it's complex, and what I've offered you today is simplistic. So it's much more nuanced than the way I've presented it. Of course it is. But even when we choose someone who is opposite, it's complicated. In childhood, when we had a need met, say the need for attention, you mentioned you were looking for someone who's present, so someone who can give us attention. And if we had a childhood where we had that need for attention really well met, then we tend to grow up into people who can tolerate a moderate amount of attention. That is to say, if we don't get too much one day, it's not a disaster. We can live with it. If, however, we had a real deficiency of attention in childhood, which is fundamental to a child's sense of survival, we grow up into being someone with an insatiable appetite for that thing. And this is the real killer, when we get that thing met, like attention as adults, we tend to push it away because we're not prepared for it. It's too intense.
Like
so we go into this dance. Sorry, just one more thing, Jennifer. So we go into this dance. I think what I want is this, and then when I get it, I don't. So it's like caught in between the two poles of a magnet. We're going from one to the other. And what I've seen is that sometimes people had a very, very bullying father, and they are very attracted to a very peaceful, gentle man. But after a year or two of power struggle, they find themselves going, man up, will you? What's the problem with you? You haven't got an opinion? Can't you speak up? You haven't got a backbone? Come on, what kind of a man up? And in a way, they can also become critical and push, as someone was saying earlier. We can prod our partners to turn them into eventually that passive husband's going to demonstrate some of the negative qualities of the bullying father. So we tend to recreate, as someone was saying earlier, the drama of our childhood that way. So it's nuanced, I'm sorry. But you had another question, or how did I do?
Thank you for this. It gave me clarity. The second one is the cycle. Is it an individual work, or is it always can we have this cycle, but with different relationships, and not repeating a step of the cycle that hurted us, but we learned from it. So in this relationship, we do not have to pass in this slice of the cycle.
I meet a lot of people who want to outsmart this. And they're clever people, and they are well-intended, and it's really intelligent, your question. I don't have a definitive answer, but I can tell you my personal opinion is that no, I think that we're wounded. What part of what attracts us to other human beings and makes us want to begin lives with them is not just the potential for love and joy, but in reaction to the wound that we had as children. So we're vulnerable and we're wounded, which means that when we are relaxed, we'll be adorable. And when we're under pressure, we'll be, let's say, not adorable. And that means that we will have power struggle. Now, I do have the perspective of, as I said, 2 long marriages. And I was 21 when I married the first time and not at all aware of my own childhood wounding. And at 40, when I married again, 42 or whatever it was, I was a very different human being with much more compassion for my own childhood. So much more kindness and forgiveness for my own life experience. This is what I'm saying. We can't sidestep the importance of doing that work for ourselves. I'm not there. I'm not some sort of evolved person or anything. I just, compared to how I was when I was young, I'm much, much kinder to myself. So the choices I make, including who I'm with, including how I am with them and how I have my boundaries with them, are much more generous than they used to be. So sometimes, yeah, it does help in second relationships, but maybe that's just the passage of time and older and wiser, maybe.
Yeah,
Matthew.
maybe it shortened the time of the harder period.
I would hope so. It seems that way to me. Sometimes it doesn't. Mostly it does.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Jennifer. Grace also has a question for you, Matthew.
Sure. Hi, Grace.
Yes. Hi, Matthew. Thank you so much. This was very enlightening and mind-opening, actually. I want to ask about the power struggle. When one partner, not the other, moves from the power struggle to the awareness, and you start understanding that it's not just your partner, but you, and you start taking responsibility, and the partner does not. So
I feel that one coming. Yes, absolutely. And sorry, I'm butting right in, Grace, just with the interest of time. But yes, and every bit of conventional wisdom will tell you it's 50-50.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got to be met halfway. And if you're not with someone who will meet you halfway, then, this hasn't got any potential at all. I don't happen to agree with that. I understand it.
Okay.
Of course I understand it. I sometimes feel it very strongly myself. But actually, I think there's a deeper truth to getting out of power struggle. And that is that it's 100-100.
No, I disagree with you here from personal experience. Because when you persevere and decide to do it because you believe in it and you know things would change and you start changing your behavior all the time, it does affect the partner, and eventually they just change without realizing that they change, or they just meet you there because something shifts and they are not conscious about it, or
that can happen. And also sometimes it really doesn't. I mean, I always say to people, give it a really good long period of time before you decide that it's a lost cause, because of exactly what you're saying, Grace. That happens. So sometimes people, it's what's the word? It's disarming. It's really disarming when someone connects to their humility. I don't mean like an actor.
No.
I don't mean when someone performs convincingly. I mean when they really touch into their own humility and they recognize their part in it and acknowledge it with apologies and recognize what they love about the other and acknowledge it with appreciation. There's a sweetness to it. But I always think the deepest truth of a relationship is that it's 100-100. There's a lovely expression which I really like, which is, I'm going to clean up my side of the road. I can't clean up your side of the road. That is your job. And for a reasonable length of time, I'm going to make that enough for me. I'm going to make it. Sorry, you were saying.
Yeah, exactly. This is what I mean. When you commit to your side, and eventually, I don't know, something happens and there's a shift. I've seen it with a lot of people I work with, and then the partner changes without really realizing, and they can still meet and go back to intimacy and finish the cycle. And it gives hope to people that it's not always good to give up too quickly or too early. That's all what I wanted to say.
Yeah, lovely. I couldn't agree more. My wife came into the kitchen a few weeks ago, And she said to me, you know what? I just realized the last 3 things I said to you were really critical. I'm sorry about that. It's not how I want to start my day with you. Apologies. I love you. Good morning. Let's try again. Now I'm melted. I completely melted. Up until that second, I was sort of eating my cornflakes going, and I melted just like that. The other thing that happened is that in that moment, I thought, you know what? I'm a relationship coach. I really better up my game because that was good. That was good. She's going to leave me behind if I'm not careful. So it's inspiring. It's exactly as you say, Grace. It can inspire without even people being aware. It can inspire a certain sweetness. Thank you.
Thank you.
You know, I think this is a session that we could probably continue for hours and hours because there's lots of questions. And I see a couple of questions that are in the chat, but I don't think that we have the time to really give them justice to the answers that they would need. They're much more complex to answer those questions. So is there a way that people can, maybe what we can do is we can jot down any questions in the chat and then we'll put them together in a document and we can send those over to you and then we could post those onto the site at the same time that we...
You'd be very welcome. I'd probably record a little video rather than write it all down. I'd just say this was a question from so-and-so,
okay,
and so-and-so, and I'll send you the video. I'm sure I can
excellent.
Get around that technologically,
yeah, that would be
but
great.
I'd be very happy to do that.
I wanted to add something.
Okay.
Thinking about what you shared with us, I was thinking about my own experiences, and I would like to add that getting through the power struggle can be, and getting through it to the other side and experiencing a much greater depth of intimacy afterwards can be one of the most beautiful experiences ever. So I think it's, I don't know, I personally think it is how a relationship should be, if there is any should anyway. What I want to say is that it is such a healthy development for a relationship that if this would be missing, this part, something really important would be missing. The depth would be missing. The depth and the mutual growth and the mutual development and the getting to know each other deeper on a real much deeper level, I think is only possible when you have these struggles in between.
Yeah.
So yeah, don't be
absolutely.
afraid.
Very couldn't agree more. Absolutely. And I work so often with couples who seem to have had an insurmountable drama, often a catastrophic discovery like affairs or that sort of thing. And what I say to them is that the life that you've had is certainly over. That, but what you may have in the future, if you process this well, could be better. Yeah. Because of exactly what you're saying, Caroline. Yeah, absolutely.
True.
It's not for the faint heart. It's not for the people who lack courage, though. It's a bold and generous thing to do. So that's what I respect in people, and occasionally in myself when I'm brave enough.
Well, again, thank you so much, Matthew, for sharing that with us. I don't know. I look at what I call my starter marriage before I was married to my forever wife now, and I see a lot of the things. There's a lot that really resonated there, and I almost feel like I kind of went through therapy today. So it's interesting, or it just makes me think even more of the importance of some of the very simple things within a relationship, the communication and things like that, and how sometimes it's the struggle that turns a piece of coal into a diamond. And it's just how you use that properly. So thanks for that. For everyone, thank you for joining us. We'll post the recording of this webinar on the Coaches for Good YouTube channel and also on our website. If you've got questions that you want to write into the chat, we'll feed those back to Matthew, and then he can record an answer to those that will also post there for you as well. And then for those of you who are interested in the update on the Coaches for Good and UAE government project, if you could stay on just for a couple of minutes, and then we'll give you a quick update on that.
Matthew,
So,
thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Matthew.
Thank you, Dennis. Thank you, Fauzi. Thank you, everybody.
Very
Thank you.
interesting. Thank you. Thank you so much. I know it's a bit early, but Merry Christmas and Happy New Year, Matthew.
Thank you. Same to everybody. I shall say my goodbyes. I don't think that will mean anything if I leave the. Maybe I'll just stop my video and mute. Or I can
No,
go.
you can go ahead and leave. It's okay.
All right. Good. Good.
I don't think it'll do
Thank you.
anything.
Lots of love, everybody. Thank you very much. Bye bye.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
All right, so I had quickly printed or attempted to print up a document that I could read to you, and of course my printer's not working. So let me pull it up on my laptop really fast, and I'll just give you a quick update. So for those of you who weren't on the call that we had 2 weeks ago, we had 57 coaches from 14 different countries that joined that were interested in learning more about the program. The UAE government has identified 10,000 Emiratis that they want to initially look at for providing coaching to. They're screening those people, and of the 10,000, they're thinking that probably 6,500 of them will be mid-listed, and those will be the ones that we'll start doing the coach screening with. And then of those, probably 3,500 to 4,500, somewhere around there, will actually go through the coaching, the full coaching process. So there's a 30-minute screening process that the coach will do, and then there are 6 45 to 60-minute coaching sessions per each candidate. We are anticipating that about half of these sessions will be one-on-one sessions, and then the other half will be group sessions. So that'd be 10 candidates for one coach in a group. We're anticipating the first wave of candidates to most likely be 90 to 95% Arabic speaking. So for those of you who are not Arabic speaking coaches, don't despair. We're going to have plenty of work for you to do in the coming wave. So just kind of hold on there. If you're interested in participating in the project and you still haven't completed the coaching form, there's a coaching form that I will put the link onto the chat right now so that you can click on that, and you can actually, oops, let me make that to everyone. You can click on that link and actually complete the coach form. That's a form that NAC, the partner that we're working with, and Coaches for Good will use as we're identifying and putting matching coaches with your availability and everything else. So it's really important that we have that document. And then the next thing is that the UAE government is requiring that we all use a Calendly app for scheduling appointments. If you don't have one already, you could actually download the app for free. And let me give you the link for that too. So that's here. And then finally, we've been sending out emails through our the info@coachesforgood.com email address. I have personally experienced when I sent it to myself, it went into my junk file. So, and there's been quite a few coaches who've come back who've said that it's gone into theirs as well. So if you haven't received any of the notifications from us and you have stated your interest in the program, please go into your spam or your junk folders and look for an email from info@coachesforgood.com. This is the email address that we're going to be using to send out all of the updates from. If you find it in there, then just flag it that email address is not spam, and then it should land in your inbox from that point forward. Right now, Coaches for Good and NAC are in a holding pattern as we're waiting for the candidate data to be forwarded from the UAE government to us. So once that transfer happens, we have approximately 10 days to prepare before beginning the initial screening meetings. So what we are saying is, or what we're thinking is, let's anticipate that given the holidays are just around the corner, my projection is that we won't begin the coaching sessions until the first or second week of January. That's my personal feeling. The decision-making process for this project is really dynamic though, so I could be totally off base and they give us the information tomorrow and then we have 10 days to start it. I don't think that's going to happen though, but please stay tuned and we'll send out the information as quickly as we've got it. We are going to be doing this project in waves, and the project itself will last anywhere from 15 to 18 months. And so we will we'll bring people in, we'll learn from each wave as we go through, and we'll figure out what's working, what's not working, and then apply that knowledge in the future as well. Tina is asking if creating a WhatsApp group with all participating coaches is an option for more efficient updates. That is, and maybe that would be a way that we kind of let everyone know that there is an update available. The only issue that I find with a WhatsApp group is that you don't have any way of actually archiving and searching and things without actually scrolling through all of the emails that you have. So I do think that what we could do is create a WhatsApp group and then just use that as a heads up. Here it goes, and then we can take you to the media or to those links. Ideally what I would like to do is immediately have the data updated and then we post it onto our website, and then we can just say go on to the website and then you can see it there. But we're still working on that to make sure that gets done as quickly as we'd like it to get done. So in the meantime, just check your emails or continue checking your emails, or you could reach out to me as well. If you write to info@coachesforgood.com, we'll answer your emails there too. So thanks again for your interest in the program. I'm really excited and I'm glad that we're steaming ahead with it. It'll be nice when we actually can start with that coaching, or the Arabic speaking coaches, because I'm not an Arabic speaking coach. So all of our Arabic speaking coaches can jump in and start coaching right ahead. So I'll open it up for questions. Pratish, you've got a question.
Yeah, hi, thank you. I actually wanted to understand, is there a separate onboarding process?
Yeah, we will have an onboarding process because NAC has a platform, an app that you'll be using to actually track your coaches and input the information in there, and that's how you end up getting the credit for your coaching hours and then for the payment as well. So there will be an onboarding for that. We're trying to figure out if it would make more sense for us to record it and then post it on site so that people can watch it when they are ready to watch it, or if we do it in bunches. We're still, that's part of this agile process. We're kind of learning as we're going.
Okay, and I am also not an Arabic speaking person. I speak English and Hindi.
Okay.
So what are the chances that I'll get the opportunity? Because I'm just new to it. I wanted to understand.
Yeah. So this first wave, the first, I don't know, couple hundred at least are going to be Arabic speaking. But there are English speaking in there as well. And because we're preparing people to move from an unemployment state into the workforce and not into a government type of job, their English speaking capabilities are going to be part of that depending on the jobs that they're going into. So there will be some who are comfortable in speaking English. If they mention that they are comfortable speaking English, we're going to assign them to an English speaking coach. If they say, I definitely want an Arabic speaking coach, then we'll assign them to an Arabic speaking coach. But I think there's going to be enough demand with all of the, I mean, to get through all 6,500 of these people. And this is just the first time the government is doing this. They're thinking of maybe doing it again as well. In some of the other sectors. So there's going to be lots of opportunities there. Also, as this project is getting more exposure, Like I said, 2 weeks ago when we all met, there were 14 different countries that were represented from coaches. And so people from around the world are starting to hear about this project. As that gives more visibility, they start to see Coaches for Good as being one of these organizations that creates these opportunities. And then that then provides even more opportunities for us to partner together to do these things. That's the whole purpose behind Coaches for Good. The community that we've created is collaborating together and creating opportunities greater than what we'd be able to create on our own.
Thank you. That's actually a great opportunity, and I look forward to being a part of it.
Good. We're glad to have you on board.
Thank you.
Any other questions before we leave? All right. So again, thanks for everything. Thanks for your interest in the program. Thanks for joining us and the community. I'm excited about the opportunities that just lie ahead for us. And I know that if we put all of our power together, I think we're unstoppable in what we can do. So have a great afternoon or great evening wherever you are in the world, and we will see you soon. Good night.